There is a moment when you meet someone and the air around them feels slightly wrong, not dramatically wrong, not obviously threatening, just a fraction off, like a photograph taken at the wrong shutter speed. Most people dismiss this sensation. They tell themselves they are being judgmental or anxious or socially awkward. They override the instinct with politeness. But the feeling was correct. It was registering something real that had not yet taken verbal form. The manipulative person produces this distortion constantly, and those who have learned to detect it do so not through analysis but through a kind of atmospheric reading. It happens in seconds because it is not intellectual. It is recognition. What confuses people initially is that they search for visible malice. They expect cold eyes or aggressive body language or some theatrical display of control. When these signs are absent, they conclude the person is safe. But manipulation at its most effective is not menacing. It is inviting. The manipulative person does not look like a villain. They look like someone offering something valuable. They appear warm, interested, accommodating. They mirror your energy and vocabulary. They seem to understand you faster than others do. This is the disorientation. You feel seen, and the feeling is so rare and so pleasant that it overrides the faint unease transmitted by everything else about the interaction. The disorientation is not that they seem bad, it is that they seem too good, and you do not yet have language for why that should make you wary. People construct explanations to resolve this dissonance. They tell themselves the person is simply charismatic or socially skilled or emotionally intelligent. They decide they are witnessing confidence or charm. These explanations are not entirely wrong, but they misidentify the nature of what is occurring. Charisma that does not manipulate produces ease. Charisma that manipulates produces a subtle debt. After the encounter, you feel slightly confused about what you agreed to. You replay the conversation and cannot find the moment when you offered what you now seem to have committed. This confusion is not an accident. It is the intended result. The manipulative person does not make requests. They shape the environment so that offering becomes your idea. They position themselves as receptive rather than demanding. The false explanation is that they are likable. The truth is that they have made themselves necessary without explanation. Once you have been exposed to this pattern multiple times, recognition becomes involuntary. You stop looking for specific behaviors and start sensing the architecture of the interaction. The manipulative person does not build rapport. They construct dependency. Every question they ask has a secondary function. Every compliment has an embedded retrieval mechanism. They are always gathering information that will later become leverage, but they gather it so smoothly that it feels like intimacy. The pattern reveals itself in how quickly they establish a sense of shared reality. Within minutes, they are speaking as though you have known each other for years. They reference private jokes that do not yet exist. They create a bubble of us against them before you have agreed to the categories. The speed is the tell. Genuine intimacy is slow. Manufactured intimacy is instant, because it is not intimacy at all. It is the simulation of intimacy for the purpose of access. The psychological inversion happens when you realize that the traits you were taught to admire are often the tools of control. Attentiveness becomes surveillance. Agreeableness becomes shapelessness. Empathy becomes data collection. The manipulative person is not deficient in social skills. They are excessively proficient. They have studied what makes people lower their defenses, and they deploy it systematically. The inversion is uncomfortable because it suggests that warmth and responsiveness are not reliable indicators of good intent. It means you cannot trust the feeling of being liked. It means the person who makes you feel most understood may be the one who understands you least, because they are not interested in you as you are. They are interested in you as a resource. The traits that signal goodness in most people signal strategy in them. You are forced to mistrust precisely what you were taught to value. The cost of this awareness is not paranoia. It is loneliness. Once you can identify the pattern, you see it everywhere. You notice it in professional settings, in social gatherings, in dating, in family dynamics. You see people being managed in real time, and you see them failing to notice. You watch someone laugh at a joke that was not funny, agree to a plan they do not want, offer help they cannot afford to give, all because the manipulative person has created a frame in which refusal feels impossible. The cost is that you cannot point this out. If you try to warn someone in the early stages of being manipulated, you sound bitter or jealous or paranoid. The manipulative person has already positioned themselves as the generous one, the one who believes in people, the one who gives chances. You become the cynic. The person being manipulated often defends their manipulator with passion because the manipulator has made them feel chosen. To reject the manipulator is to reject the identity the manipulator has sold them. So you stay quiet. You watch it happen. You limit your own exposure and accept that some people will not see it until the cost becomes undeniable. The advantage, if it can be called that, is clarity. You waste less time. You do not get drawn into long, ambiguous situations where you are confused about why you feel drained. You recognize the shape of the interaction, and you exit before investment occurs. You do not need to judge the person or understand their motives or fix them. You simply see that the structure of the relationship is extractive, and you do not enter it. This is not cruelty. It is boundary maintenance. The manipulative person will often react to your withdrawal with confusion or hurt. They are accustomed to people taking longer to disengage. When you leave early, they lose the most valuable resource, which is time. Time to build dependency. Time to complicate the relationship so that exit feels disloyal. Time to make you feel responsible for their well-being. By recognizing the pattern immediately, you deny them the runway. This makes you unprofitable. They move on quickly, which confirms the diagnosis. If your absence produces only brief discomfort followed by replacement, the connection was never personal. It was functional. The social consequence is that you become illegible to people who have not developed this recognition system. They think you are cold or judgmental or withholding. They watch you decline invitations or keep conversations shallow with certain people, and they interpret this as unfriendliness. They do not see the pattern you are avoiding. They only see your distance. Over time, this creates a divide. You sort into environments where others also recognize the pattern, and you avoid environments where it is endemic and unnamed. This is not snobbery. It is self-preservation. The manipulative person thrives in environments where pattern recognition is considered rude. They rely on social norms that prioritize surface harmony over structural honesty. If you insist on structural honesty, you become the problem. You are the one making things awkward. You are the one who will not play along. This is correct. You are those things. The question is whether you value the appearance of social cohesion over your own autonomy. Most people, most of the time, choose appearance. You stop trying to explain why you do not. What solidifies over time is not bitterness but disinterest. You stop feeling angry at manipulative people. You stop needing them to be exposed or punished or reformed. You see them as a weather pattern, predictable, avoidable if you check the forecast, dangerous only if you ignore the signs. This shift from moral judgment to practical assessment is the final stage. It means you have stopped taking their behavior personally. You understand that manipulation is not about you. It is about them and their relationship to need. They experience need as intolerable, so they outsource it. They make other people carry it. They construct relationships in which they are always the giver, the helper, the one who understands, because this position protects them from vulnerability. The cost of this strategy is that they never form connections that could sustain them when performance fails. They are surrounded by people, but profoundly isolated. Understanding this does not make you forgive them. It makes you uninterested in participating. Compassion without engagement. Recognition without involvement. The resolution is not a technique. It is an orientation. You stop asking whether someone is manipulative. You start asking whether the interaction has integrity. Integrity means the explicit and implicit levels align. What someone says they want matches what they are actually constructing. What they claim to offer matches what they deliver. The manipulative person creates constant gaps between these levels. They say they want connection, but build leverage. They say they admire your independence, but punish your boundaries. They say they are happy to help, but keep detailed emotional accounts. Integrity is rare, and therefore legible. When you are with someone who operates with integrity, the interaction feels clean. There is no residue, no confusion, no need to decipher or translate. You know where you stand because they have told you directly, and their behavior confirms it. The 10 seconds it takes to recognize manipulation is really the time it takes to sense whether integrity is present. If it is not, everything else is decoration. Some people will read this and feel relief. They will recognize that what they have been sensing is real and nameable. They will stop overriding their instincts with politeness. Other people will read this and feel accused. They will wonder if they are the manipulative person. The difference is that the manipulative person does not wonder. They know what they are doing. They have simply decided it is necessary. They tell themselves everyone does it, or the world is harsh, or they have earned the right to take what they need. They do not experience guilt. They experience inconvenience when someone resists. If you are worried you might be manipulative, you are probably not. The worry itself is evidence of a feedback system the manipulative person has disabled. They do not audit themselves. They audit others. They are constantly scanning for weakness, for need, for the gap between what someone wants and what they have. That gap is the entry point. They widen it. They position themselves as the solution. Then, they collect. What remains unsaid in most discussions of manipulation is that it is not always conscious. Some people learn these patterns so early that they are embedded in their reflexes. They do not wake up and decide to manipulate. They simply interact, the only way they know how. This does not make the pattern less harmful. It makes it harder to address. The unconscious manipulator is often bewildered by the consequences of their behavior. They genuinely do not understand why people leave. They experience themselves as generous and misunderstood. Pointing out the pattern does not produce change. It produces defensiveness. They reframe the accusation as an attack. They gather support from people who have not yet noticed the pattern. They create a counter-narrative in which you are the problem. This is why direct confrontation is usually futile. The pattern protects itself. The only effective response is absence. When enough people withdraw, the pattern either collapses or migrates. It finds new environments where it has not yet been identified. You cannot save someone from a pattern they do not see. You can only decline to participate. The 10 seconds are not about gathering evidence. They are about trusting the first read. The manipulative person reveals themselves immediately, not in what they say, but in how the space around them feels. It feels managed. It feels like you are being positioned. It feels like a transaction pretending to be a connection. If you pause and listen to that feeling instead of arguing with it, you will know. The instinct is older than language. It evolved to detect predation. Social predation is subtler than physical predation, but the detection system is the same. It reads micro-expressions, tonal inconsistencies, the gap between word and gesture. It notices when someone is performing emotions rather than feeling them. It registers the slight delay before someone mirrors your expression. It catches the calculation behind the smile. You do not need to understand why the system is alarming. You only need to trust that it is. Trust is the resource the manipulative person requires. Without it, they have no material to work with. They cannot leverage what you do not give them. This is why the first 10 seconds are so important. If you withhold trust until it is earned rather than offering it as a default, manipulation becomes difficult. The manipulative person relies on your openness. They expect you to meet them halfway. When you do not, when you remain neutral and observant, they often withdraw on their own. You become too much work. This is the cleanest outcome. No confrontation, no explanation. Just mutual recognition that the interaction will not proceed on their terms. They find someone else. You continue unburdened. The relationship that never forms is sometimes the most important one to avoid. People who have developed this capacity often report feeling alien in contexts that reward social fluency. They are accused of being cold or withholding or paranoid. They are told they have trust issues. These accusations are accurate in a technical sense. They do not trust automatically. They trust selectively, after observation, after consistency, after time. This is pathologized as damage. It is more accurately described as adaptation. If you have been manipulated enough times, you learn to recognize the early warning signs. If you fail to learn, you remain vulnerable. The social penalty for learning is that you no longer fit seamlessly into environments that depend on unexamined trust. You ask questions that make people uncomfortable. You decline invitations that seem harmless to others. You create distance that feels unnecessary to people who do not see what you see. This distance is not a failure of connection. It is the price of discernment. You pay it willingly because the alternative is worse. The final observation is that manipulation is not the opposite of connection. It is the perversion of it. The manipulative person uses the language and gestures of intimacy to achieve the goals of extraction. This makes it difficult to identify because the surface resembles what you are seeking. The difference is in the foundation. Real connection generates energy. Both people leave the interaction more resourced than when they entered. Manipulation depletes. One person leaves resourced. The other leaves confused and diminished. If you track how you feel after interactions, rather than during them, the pattern becomes obvious. The person who makes you feel energized in the moment but drained an hour later is managing your state for their purposes. They are borrowing your energy, your attention, your goodwill, and they are not repaying. The loan is structured so that you do not notice the terms until you are in too deep to exit without cost. Recognizing this in 10 seconds means catching it before the loan is issued. You see the terms in advance. You decline the contract. You walk away solvent.